What would happen if one day you woke up reincarnated in the body of a demon, hated by everyone, living a nightmare life, until you unlock a rare power that changes everything? Well, that's exactly the story we're diving into today. So let's begin. The main character, Chinyu, was lying in bed but couldn't sleep. He felt uncomfortable, like the bed was too small and his legs didn't fit. After a moment, he realized he had already gone through all this and somehow ended up in a strange world of riders. Suddenly, a girl appeared beside his bed and told him to wake up immediately. When Chinyu looked at her, she asked in disgust why he was still in bed at this hour. She said the aunt wasn't going to send him a personal invitation to come to the kitchen. The girl was Yuli, a third-year high school student and a rank 2 martial artist. She was the best student at her school. When Chinyu looked at her, he realized this was the real deal. But Yuli didn't like what he said and started yelling at him, saying he had no right to call himself the son of the emperor, a knight of the order of the centurion, or a 4th-rank fighter. While the two of them were arguing in the room under the stairs, the woman in the kitchen was calmly making breakfast, not paying attention to them. When they came to the table, Yuna told her daughter to be nice to Chinyu, since he was her brother. But Yuli said she didn't see him as a brother, she saw him as an enemy. Even though Yuna asked her not to say such things, Chinyu thought to himself that Yuli was right. Based on the memories of the body's original owner, not only was he her enemy, but he was also the one who finished Yuna's husband, yet now he was sitting at the same table with her. 11 years ago, the gates of Se opened, and hundreds of thousands of demons came out, bringing destruction. The whole empire united to push them back. They eventually withdrew, but some of them left behind descendants. One of those descendants was Chinyu, the main character. He was only 16 and a 1st-rank warrior. When he stood up from the table, a glass of water suddenly flew at him. Yuli had thrown it and said the empire should never have accepted someone like him. She wouldn't calm down, but Chinyu didn't respond to her words. Yuna tried to calm her daughter. Chinyu went back to his room, sat on the bed, and started thinking. He understood that Yuli's anger was because of her father's death, but he didn't think she truly believed he was a bastard. No matter how much people hated him, no one had tried to deal with him directly. Now he was wondering what to do next. He thought maybe the system would wake up now. As he covered his eyes with his hands, he felt his horns start to tingle like electricity was running through them. Then he heard a voice in his head saying the system had been activated. Surprised, he jumped up and looked around. Suddenly, a screen appeared in front of him saying he could improve his skills by using energy from opponents, but for now, he had no opponents. Chinyu thought this was great news. Later, he left the room and decided that now that he had a system, he shouldn't have to do chores anymore. Then the system reminded him that in his previous life, he died after being beaten up and sent to the hospital. He had a fight with another patient there, which led to his death from hypoxia. As he walked through the hallway, he noticed no one else was home except Aunt Yuna. He was happy about that, since if Yuli were around, she'd definitely beat him up. Yuna would probably just scold him a little. So, he decided to try scaring her and testing the system. He walked up behind her and made a scary pose, hoping to surprise her. But Yuna reacted quickly. She grabbed a knife and held it to his neck, having sensed someone behind her. She asked what he was doing there. Chinyu froze and didn't say a word. Yuna told him she didn't need any help and that he should go rest. The system informed the main character that the girl had intense hatred, which was why her energy was always active. At that moment, he realized this was how the system worked. He also understood that Aunt Yuna deeply hated him too. He decided not to argue with the girl, bowed his head, and chose to do what she said. He quickly went to his room under the stairs before things got worse. He locked the door and sat down, thinking that this woman was completely abnormal. He could feel how strong her energy was, and now he realized it was all because of him. He tried to understand who she really was, just someone crazy or someone who acted fake. But in the end, he figured it didn't matter, because her hatred was helping him gain energy. So, he decided to live by the idea that what doesn't finish you makes you stronger. Then he turned to the system and chose to increase his physical strength. With each level, the cost to improve grew, but he didn't know where to get that much energy. He thought maybe he should appear in front of his aunt more often, but he was afraid of what might happen. So, he decided to go to his little sister's room instead. He opened the door and said he wanted to talk, but he came at the wrong time. Yuli was changing her clothes. When she saw her stepbrother standing there, she quickly covered herself and screamed. Chinyu turned red, but he said she had nothing to hide from him. He joked that they both had the same things and even showed off his muscles, saying his chest was bigger than hers. Yuli didn't find it funny. She punched him in the stomach and looked like she wanted to finish him. The system told him that her anger had been used, which gave him some energy. Yuli was a bit shocked because she had hit him really hard. But Chinyu quickly recovered, cleared his throat, and said that the punch was pretty weak. He thought to himself that this was exactly what he needed. It wasn't a waste after all. He stood by the door, waiting until she started changing again, which made Yuli even angrier. She started punching him again, and the system kept confirming that her anger was giving him energy. Then Yuli kicked him in the face, and he flew to the other side of the room. The system said that 500 energy units had been collected from her anger. While Chinyu was lying on the floor, he looked through the crack in the door and saw Yuna's face. She asked what he was doing in her daughter's room. At that moment, he saw Yuna's hatred grow even more, and it scared him. He stood up slowly, said he would go back to his room, and wished them both good night. After Yuna entered the room, Yuli assumed Chinyu had just been trying to make a joke. Meanwhile, Chinyu returned to his room and decided to test his new strength. He took a knife and stabbed himself in the stomach, but instead of cutting him, the knife broke. The system then informed him that he had reached level 11 Est Warrior. The next day, he had to go to school. He packed his things and headed to the building, thinking of it as a place full of energy that could help him grow. When he saw his classmates, he showed them the middle finger. He decided he would rely only on his own education and on expressing his feelings freely. His plan worked. The system started informing him non-stop that his strength was increasing because of the hatred people felt toward him. That's when Chinyu realized this wasn't just a school, it was an energy field for him. Yuli, who was watching all of this, didn't understand what was going on with her brother. He used to hate going to school, but now he looked unusually excited. Meanwhile, Chinyu walked into school with a smile on his face. Someone called out to him from behind. When he turned around, he saw Yuran, his homeroom teacher. Standing next to her was the school's goddess, who looked surprised that Chinyu had finally shown up. She asked how he was feeling, saying she'd heard he was a little sick. Chinyu turned to answer her, but at that moment, he felt his energy go up by 55. He figured Yuran was pretending to care and probably hated him too. But when he looked back, he saw his annoyed male classmates and realized this time it was about jealousy. So, he decided to take advantage of the situation and, accidentally, fell on Yuran, saying he was actually feeling fine. The girl misunderstood and assumed he was still weak since he couldn't stand up, so she said she'd take him to the infirmary. Meanwhile, Chinyu was still lying on top of his teacher, and the rest of the students stood frozen in shock, not believing what they were seeing. Chinyu looked up at Yuran and said he felt weak because of love and that maybe school wasn't so bad after all. Later, while he was sitting calmly on a bake, some classmates came up behind him with a huge bag, ready to attack. They tried to pull the bag over his head, but Chinyu wasn't scared. He treated them like practice dummies and decided to try some new moves. Even though he couldn't see, he kneed one of them in the face and started a full-blown fight. Yuli was watching everything from behind a wall. She looked closer and recognized the guy under the bag. It was her stepbrother, Chinyu. Seeing him getting attacked made her furious because she believed that only she had the right to beat him. So, she stepped in. But she didn't realize Chinyu couldn't see who was attacking him. He ended up punching her in the face. The hit was strong, and Yuli flew backward and landed face down on the ground. After the fight, Chinyu stood over his classmates, victorious. He took off the bag and let out a breath. Then he saw Yuli on the side and realized he had heard her voice correctly. He also understood that maybe Yuli didn't hate him as much as he'd thought. Not only had she helped him, but she also seemed to hate him less than the others. Realizing this, Chinyu sighed and thought that Yuli was definitely different. He picked her up, carried her on his back, and took her home since she couldn't walk at that moment. Things calmed down for a while after that. Yuli told her mom she had just gotten distracted during training and missed a few moves, which was why she had bruises. Meanwhile, Chinyu focused on gaining more energy points. He stirred up self-hatred among his classmates and constantly annoyed the teacher. He even interfered in their love lives by exposing their secrets to each other. He also stopped by the principal's office and told him that someone had dropped their anti-fall mom, and he was just kind enough to return her. One day, it was North County High School's Religion Day, a competition between schools. But when Chinyu got to school, he noticed that no one was there. He had no idea what was going on and assumed classes had just been cancelled. Suddenly, Chinyu heard loud voices coming from the other side. He looked toward the next room, which was next to the school building, and realized that all the students were gathered there. This made him happy, and he thought that now everyone would be within his reach. Meanwhile, inside that room, a fight was going on. There was an arena where students were competing. One of the participants turned out to be Yuli. When Chinyu entered, he saw his half-sister and at first thought her opponent was unlucky to face her. But when he looked more closely, he saw that Yuli was actually losing. Someone had thrown her into the air, and just as she was about to hit the ground, Chinyu ran over and caught her. He noticed scratches on her face and that she was breathing heavily. Yuli looked up and saw the fighter she had been facing still standing in the arena. His name was Bai, and he was the heir to the White Dog Company. Bai looked at Yuli, who was about to pass out, laughed, and called her weak for being the daughter of a knight from the Centurion Order. He said it was funny, then turned to the teacher and asked him to announce that he was now the new representative of the 3rd high school class. Chin-yu couldn't believe what was happening. He didn't understand how someone as strong as Yuli could get injured so badly by a classmate. He remembered that earlier in the morning, Yuli had told her mom she was heading out on business. When she passed Chin-yu, she told him not to get involved and said he was probably the only one at school who didn't know what was going on. Chin-yu didn't understand what she meant, but Yuli told him not to worry about it and that he'd find out soon. She also mentioned that starting today, he could join the Knights. At the time, Chin-yu remembered that Aunt Yuna had lifted the age restrictions, so he didn't understand why Yuli suddenly allowed him in. Later, after Yuli made it to the finals of the class representative matches, Yuran reminded all the participants to put friendship first and competition second. Then she announced the start of the final match to decide the class representative for the Northern District High School tournament. She introduced the first participant, Yuli, the daughter of the lead knight and a second-year student. Then she introduced the second participant, Bai, heir to the White Dog Company, also a second-year student. She wished them both good luck. As soon as the match started, Yuli grabbed her sword and rushed to attack. Bai thought he could block her easily, but she moved too fast, and he barely had time to put his shield up. When he realized Yuli wasn't going to stop, he quickly used his magic armor. Yuli then stabbed Bai in the back with her sword, hoping to end the fight, but it had no effect. Bai turned around and knocked her down, throwing her across the arena. He saw a chance to attack and laughed, asking if she really thought she could beat a future knight in speed. But Yuli didn't give up. She broke through his armor and told him not to expect an easy win. Then she launched a powerful move called the Mounted Knight Strike from above. The impact was so strong that Bai was pinned to the ground, coughing as smoke and dust rose around him. Yuli stood in front of him with a smile, placed her sword at his neck, and said the winner had already been decided. Yuran walked up to Yuli with a smile and said she was ready to announce the winner. But before she could say Yuli's name, they suddenly heard a strange sound behind them. Yuli tensed up but didn't have time to react. Bai rushed forward and punched her in the back, sending her flying out of the ring. As she hit the ground, Bai smiled and said that the victory was his. It turned out that earlier, Yuran had visited Yuna at her home. She told her that she wanted to remove Bai from the fight, but the school insisted that the match would happen the day after tomorrow. So, the teacher couldn't do anything except transfer Yuli to another school if requested. She apologized to Yuna, addressed her as a centurion, and said she hoped Yuli would win the duel. Yuna reminded her that the title, centurion, had been banned 10 years ago, so she shouldn't be using it either. Then she changed the topic back to her daughter and said she trusted that Yuran had done everything she could. Yuran replied that it wasn't her fault, but the school's. She added that if it weren't for Yuna's regiment fighting hard on the battlefield 10 years ago, they wouldn't even have the peace they had today. She said she was doing everything she could to help Yuli become a class representative and join the order. But Yuna knew that her daughter had failed, ended up losing, and was now in the hospital with a broken leg. She thanked Yuran for explaining everything. Yuran noticed it was getting late and said she had to leave. Yuna didn't stop her. As Yuran got up to leave, Chin-yu came out of his room and offered to walk her home. While walking down the street, Yuran thanked him for keeping her company. Chin-yu then asked if Bai would really become the high school representative. Yuran said that unless someone defeated him by tomorrow afternoon, he would officially get the position. From her expression, it was clear she didn't like Bai either, but she couldn't do anything about it. She then asked why Chin-yu was interested. He said he was just worried about his classmates. He couldn't stop thinking about how his stepsister lost to Bai and how much she had wanted to win. Yuran gave a small smile and said she hoped all of this would help bring the class together. The next day, school started as usual. Bai sat at his desk, looking pleased. His classmates kept glancing at him, some sarcastically, but he didn't care. He was sure that after the competition ended and he got the title, top universities would start competing to recruit him. He believed that one day, he would be at the top and get everything he wanted. So the opinions of his classmates didn't bother him. He never saw them as real competition. Just then, Chin-yu entered the room and slammed his fist on the door. He looked at the students and asked if the so-called heir was there. Bai realized he was talking about him and looked shocked. He jumped up, slammed his fists on the desk, and asked Chin-yu what he was doing there, calling him a loser. At that moment, the system notified Chin-yu that his energy had risen to 120 because of Bai's hostility. Chin-yu calmly said Bai could call him whatever he wanted. The system kept sending messages about his increasing energy. Chin-yu walked up to Bai and told him he was here to challenge him, and he was waiting for him to accept. Bai responded by saying that their levels were too different, and when he heard the challenge, a confident smile appeared on his face. He was sure that defeating Chin-yu would be easy, so he accepted right away. As soon as he agreed, Chin-yu grabbed his hair and slammed his head onto the desk, saying that since he had officially proposed a fight, he should show respect and bow properly. He held Bai down with full force, making him look completely helpless. This action caused Chin-yu's energy to rise by 621. Soon after, the boys headed to the training field. When Yuran heard what was going on, she was shocked. Chin-yu was only at level 1.1, while Bai was at 2.7. She was sure Qin Yu would get himself finished, but the students told her that both boys were already in the ring. The teacher knew that once a fight started in the ring, she had no right to stop it. She could only step in if the situation became hopeless. Meanwhile, Qin Yu and Bai got ready for the battle. Bai warned Qin Yu that once the fight began, it would be too late to back down. He pointed out that Qin Yu didn't even have a proper combat uniform and assumed he couldn't afford one. Qin Yu just smiled and asked Bai if he really thought he deserved to be treated with respect just because of the rules. This made Bai angry. He raised his weapon and shield and activated a skill called Life Stream of Power. He charged at Qin Yu, saying that after one hit, Qin Yu would be as good as dead. Bai believed in his abilities, both offensive and defensive, and since he had managed to hold off Yuli, he was confident this fight would be easy too. But before Bai could land a hit, Qin Yu countered with a punch that broke Bai's weapon. Then he hit Bai straight in the chest with another punch, sending him flying across the training area. The students were shocked. No one expected this kind of result. Yuran was also surprised, as she was sure nothing good would come out of this for Qin Yu. Qin Yu kept attacking Bai, saying that in his next life, he should try to be a better person. At that point, Yuran decided to step in. She told Qin Yu to stop since the fight was already over and he had clearly won. She warned him that if he didn't stop, he might end up finishing Bai, and then both his aunt and sister could be court-martialed. But Qin Yu didn't seem to hear her. She walked up to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. In that moment, Qin Yu nearly hit her out of instinct, still caught up in the fight. Then he snapped out of it and looked at Bai, who was unconscious. He realized that Yuran was right. Yuran told him she appreciated that he trusted her. Then she called the medical team to take Bai away. She thought to herself that the white dogs would probably investigate what happened, but since it was Qin Yu involved, the issue could be handled. So she did what she believed was the right thing. She walked over to Qin Yu and asked if he wanted to become the high school representative. Later, Yuran was called to the principal's office. When she arrived, the principal was already there, sitting with two colleagues. Principal Li, who was a tiger, asked Yuran what she thought of Qin Yu's actions. Yuran replied that she believed Qin Yu had acted appropriately because it was Bai who broke the rules first by attacking Yuli. Then Vice Principal Lu, who was a servant, stepped forward and asked Yuran if she really thought the situation gave her the right to hit someone. At that moment, the second Vice Principal, Ian, who was a sheep, joined in and asked what the issue was. He said that Bai had no problem hitting others, but suddenly acted like no one could touch him. Ian was clearly frustrated by this double standard. Principal Li reminded everyone that Qin Yu was a special student, and if he was found innocent, it could cause public backlash. But Yuran stood by her opinion and said she had a proposal. She showed them her hand, which had Qin Yu's fingerprints, and said that he should become the school's representative. Ian jumped up and asked Yuran if Qin Yu was threatening her. He said she was a skilled warrior, and it was hard to believe a student was intimidating her. Yuran explained that when she tried to revive Bai, Qin Yu grabbed her arm tightly and left a mark. She believed that an ordinary level 1 warrior couldn't have broken through her defense. She said she felt that Qin Yu was special and completely deserving of being the school's representative. Ian agreed that they needed to make an official statement soon so the white dogs wouldn't cause more trouble. He said this way, they could consider the matter closed. Yuran added that Qin Yu's victory couldn't be taken away, and the white dogs would definitely come to them soon. So she wished the directors good luck. At that point, the men started to wonder if Yuran was using them for her own goals. A few hours later, as expected, Bai showed up at the principal's office with his father. Yuna was already there with her daughter, Yuli. Principal Li greeted everyone and said the reason for the meeting should be clear, so they should get straight to the point. Yuna stayed calm, but when Yuli saw Bai's condition, she couldn't help laughing. Bai looked really defeated, his face was bruised, and some bones were broken. Yuli laughed and asked Bai if Qin Yu really gave him that much trouble. Then the president of the White Dogs group, President, turned to Yuna. He said he respected her past achievements on the battlefield, but her expression made it clear she wasn't going to hand over Qin Yu. Realizing this, the president warned her that he only respected her because of what she did in the past. He added that if they didn't hand over Qin Yu, he would just hire someone to deal with him. Then he asked Yuna how she was the only one who survived the war 10 years ago and why her order had become almost meaningless. Yuli got angry hearing this and stood up, ready to attack the president. She told him to shut his mouth, but Yuna stopped her by placing a hand on her shoulder. She then asked the president if his words could be taken as a direct threat to a member of the Chivalry Order's family. At that moment, all the directors looked surprised and even scared because the situation was getting tense and seemed close to exploding. President also got nervous and tried to explain, saying that wasn't what he meant. Then he added that Chinyu was a demon and not part of their family. Ian thought to himself that Yuna seemed to care a lot about this boy. Yuna and her daughter then started to leave, saying that since no one had a real solution, there was nothing more to discuss. Finally, the president warned her not to forget that Chinyu wasn't a normal boy. He said that Chinyu was a demon, and one day, he would lose control and finish everyone. Yuna replied that she had made a bet with someone about that. They were betting on whether Chinyu would one day reveal his true nature and become a monster. When Ian heard this, he guessed that the other person in the bet believed Chinyu would eventually go crazy. Yuna proudly said that she was the one who made the bet on this outcome. Then she added that if things went wrong, she would take care of it. Meanwhile, the main character, Chinyu, was riding a bus when he suddenly sneezed. He thought maybe someone was thinking about him. Then he got annoyed, remembering that the teacher had sent him here without saying anything or even asking for his permission to participate. He noticed a girl sitting on the next bus, cleaning her sword. She looked really worried. When she saw that Chinyu was staring at her, her expression turned scared. Chinyu smiled to himself. He remembered that many people called him a bull because one of his horns was broken. Seeing her fear, he decided to mess with her a little. He pressed his face against the glass, made a scary smile, and told her that he really was a demon hiding his true power until the day he would destroy everyone. He said the demons were coming, and they were already very close. Because of this, the bus swerved off the road and almost crashed into a pole. At the same time, Chinyu felt his energy rising quickly. It was coming from the girl's fear and hostility. It felt good to him, like he was absorbing it. Since there were many people around, it was a good opportunity for him to collect more energy. Just then, he felt someone else's hostility growing toward him again. The feeling seemed familiar. When he looked up at a nearby building, he saw Yuna and Yuli standing there. He guessed his aunt had found out what Bai did and was trying to be kind to him. Chinyu decided he should return the favor for such a nice gift. So, when he saw his family, he gave the middle finger to his half-sister. Yuli got a little angry and made an annoyed face. That reaction gave Chinyu even more energy, which made him happy. The anger around him only made him stronger. Meanwhile, the host announced that the high school league competition had officially started. Like other events, it was supported by 123 companies and respected chivalry orders. 24 regiments of knights had come as honorary guests. The host pointed to the stands where the knights were watching everything seriously. As soon as they were introduced, they all hit their chests with their fists and shouted, "Courage and justice." Then the other knight regiments stood up and shouted their own mottos. The audience got really excited because most of them had never seen knights in real life before. After that, the host said that humans and werewolves were united. He said their strength came from their unity and wished the participants success in leading the country to a bright future. Then he announced that everyone should welcome the 1,358 students who came to take part in the contest. Chinyu watched everything with interest. When he realized that the other participants were about to enter the arena, he thought it was a great chance to absorb more energy. The host said that each participant would get 5 minutes to introduce themselves. He reminded them that everyone on the continent was watching. Then the participants began to walk into the arena one by one to greet the audience. Many shouted that they wanted to become famous and make the human race stronger and unbeatable. Soon, it was Chinyu's turn. As he walked up to the stage, he gave the middle finger to the entire crowd and called them scum. Yuli felt completely embarrassed by her stepbrother and decided to pretend she didn't know him. The principal turned to Yuran and asked if she thought Chinyu was going too far. The teacher said maybe he was, but chose not to step in. Then the host announced that it was time to explain the rules of the competition. He said that all the participants would be sent to Nova Island for a whole week. For the first 3 days, food would be provided, but after that, they would need to find their own supplies. He also said that tens of thousands of monsters had been released on the island. These were dangerous beasts from the demon gates, known as finishing machines. They were divided into 5 levels based on their strength. The monsters' bodies were already covered with special energy balls. The more balls a participant collected, the higher their score would be. At the end of this round, the top 100 students would be chosen to enter the final battle in the arena. The host explained that their scientists had developed energy balls that not only showed the participants live on screen but could also save their lives in dangerous situations. However, if a participant used the ball's emergency feature to escape, they would be disqualified. The balls monitored each student's physical condition, and if their condition became too bad, they would be automatically transported to safety, which also meant disqualification. After explaining all this, the host turned back to the students and asked them to get ready to leave for the island. A tall man came forward and used a special skill to teleport everyone. When the students looked up, they saw a huge transparent dome appear above them, as if it were pulling them into another space. In the next moment, they found themselves on a plane, flying toward the island. Chinyu thought the technique was quite unusual. Just then, people on the plane started shouting that there was a demon on board. When Chinyu looked around, he realized they were talking about him. Without wasting time, some of the students ran at him and said they wouldn't let a demon live. Meanwhile, Yuna and Yuli were watching everything on a screen. Yuli asked her mom if she thought Chinyu could get a good position in the rankings. Yuna said no, she didn't think so. Yuli asked why, since Chinyu was strong, even stronger than her. Yuna replied that no matter how strong Chinyu was, it didn't matter. She reminded Yuli that Chinyu came from a region linked with demons for thousands of years, and the other players wouldn't let him succeed because of the hatred toward demons. In her mind, Yuli thought that Chinyu was different from other demons and not as bad as people thought. She looked back at the screen showing her half-brother and silently wished him good luck. At that moment, several participants attacked Chinyu together. They said they would cut off his head and offer it as a sacrifice to fallen warriors. Chinyu quickly said he was just joking and that he wasn't really a demon. But one of the attackers kicked him in the head and said he needed to finish Chinyu first to remove a strong competitor. Chinyu realized he couldn't just let this continue. He hit the guy in the face and easily handled the rest of the attackers. Then he walked over to a backpack one of them had dropped. He looked at the others and said they were all just disgusting. Right then, his energy increased dramatically because of all the hatred directed at him. Chinyu didn't hesitate. He punched the plain floor, creating a hole, and everyone started falling through it. But he was prepared to fall. He transported them to another place. Meanwhile, the main character calmly floated down using a parachute. He thought to himself that this energy ball would come in handy. Soon, he landed in a sandy, mountainous area. He carefully descended, and after a few moments, his feet touched the ground. When Yuli saw this, she looked happy and excited for her brother. But the president was really upset. It was like he had lost consciousness after realizing that Chinyu had taken down the elite students from his school and was still completely fine. At that moment, Yuli overheard the other spectators saying that Chinyu was finished now, because the Phantom Bull, a level 3 beast, had noticed him. Meanwhile, the main character stood in the middle of the field, completely unaware that a monster was standing right behind him. Chinyu looked around and noticed that the place was pretty unpleasant. Meanwhile, a bull started getting angry. Steam came out of its nose as it charged straight at him. Yuli, watching from a distance, mentally begged him to pay attention and be careful. While Chinyu was checking out the area, two bulls were already approaching, ready to attack. At the same time, insects were stinging his back, and he cursed himself, wondering why there were so many bugs here. When he turned around, the bulls that were about to attack him were already unconscious, and he hadn't even realized when he managed to defeat them. At that moment, the directors sitting in the assembly hall were shocked. They thought he hadn't been this strong before, but now it seemed like a different story. One of them turned to his assistants and asked if they had any idea about what was going on. He thought to himself that this kid was raised by Yuna, a heroine, so maybe it wasn't surprising he turned out this strong. Still, he wanted to test him further. Meanwhile, Chinyu decided to have a snack. He used a strange red ball, and when the teachers and officials saw this, they were shocked. They couldn't believe he was actually eating energy balls. Those were the key to passing the trials. Chinyu found it tasty, then looked at the bowl and figured the meat was useless anyway since he didn't know how to cook it. After cooling off, he got up and decided it was time to start earning points. To increase his energy, he went to a bear's den and stole 2 cubs from their mother. After that, he climbed a rock and used an eagle egg to make scrambled eggs for himself. The audience watching him was extremely surprised. He didn't seem to care about his safety at all. While enjoying his risky adventures, Chinyu suddenly noticed dog ears sticking out of the grass. He thought he'd never had a dog before and ran toward the ears, thinking it was a puppy he could take with him. But when he grabbed them, he realized it wasn't a puppy, it was a small girl named Quan with dog ears, who cried out in pain as he pulled on her. When he realized she was a girl, he screamed in shock and quickly let go. Just then, 3 more girls with dog ears appeared, Yuyu, Chi-Chi, and Lan Lan. They were Quan's older sisters. When they saw her crying on the grass with Chinyu standing over her, the scene looked very suspicious. Quan, the youngest of the group, sat on the grass and cried. Lan Lan went over to comfort her and mentioned that the hero seemed like a decent guy. Chi-Chi, however, was upset and said she wanted the hero to die. The oldest sister, Yuyu, figured out it was all just a misunderstanding. Chinyu, confused, asked why they were beating him if they knew it was a misunderstanding. He said if it weren't for him, their sister could have been in danger. That's when the girls realized they had seen him before, but seeing him in person was more interesting than watching him on a screen. Yuyu remembered he was the same guy who had acted provocatively during a competition. Chinyu didn't pay much attention to them and instead showed them a snake and a crocodile, asking if they wanted to help cook. Quan got excited and grabbed a knife, slicing the snake into thin pieces. Yuyu worked on seasoning the meat with herbs to add flavor. When the main character looked at the girls, it felt like she was on some kind of cooking show. She thought they were trying so hard that when they opened the lid, the food would be made of real gold. But the crocodile didn't understand how the cooking could turn out like this. Even the system said the crocodile was angrier now, because of how it was cooked. than when Qin Yu had killed it. The girls came over and asked Qin Yu why he wasn't eating. He said that if he tried the dish, he might as well commit suicide. But the girls insisted, saying they were used to letting their guests eat first, so Qin Yu had to try it. There was nothing in the dish that looked edible, and he wasn't even hungry, so he refused and told the girls to try it themselves. An argument started, and no one wanted to try the awful crocodile dish. Just then, they heard a voice behind them. A girl shouted at Qin Yu, telling him to let her sisters go. Before he could react, a sword flew past him and knocked the bowl of green liquid out of his hands. He turned toward the direction it came from and saw another girl walking toward him. As she got closer, she suddenly jumped to attack. The girls recognized her as their older sister, Xiao Xiao, but they hadn't expected her to show up. Qin Yu realized he had nothing to defend himself with, so in a panic, he grabbed Quan by her hood and held her in front of him as a shield. At the last second, Xiao Xiao turned her sword away to avoid hurting her sister and only cut off a small bit of her ponytail. When Xiao Xiao saw he had used her little sister as a shield, she became furious. Qin Yu could feel how angry she was. Meanwhile, Quan was waving her arms and yelling at Qin Yu to let her go. Eventually, he tossed her aside. The sisters rushed over to Quan, who was crying, and asked if she was okay. Qin Yu looked at all of them and noticed they had big floppy ears hanging to the sides. He guessed they definitely weren't dachshunds. When Xiao Xiao heard that, she got even more upset. She called Qin Yu a one-horned demon and said she wouldn't let him get away with bullying them. She pointed her sword at him again and threatened to rip off his horn. Qin Yu was annoyed and tried to dodge her attacks while explaining that her sisters had tried to poison him. As the girls kept attacking all at once, he realized it didn't feel like a fair fight. It was more like getting jumped by a gang. He stood next to a big tree as the girls surrounded him, but he wasn't ready to give up. He pulled the tree out of the ground and started swinging the trunk around, knocking the girls away. Xiao Xiao realized her sisters couldn't handle him, so she decided to take over. She turned her sword and started chopping the tree. Qin Yu noticed Xiao Xiao was moving like a pencil sharpener, and soon she had carved one end of the tree into a sharp point. He knew he had to stop her somehow, so he ran toward her, holding the log. At the last second, Xiao Xiao stabbed her sword straight into the sharpened end of the tree, but her sword got stuck. Qin Yu stopped and asked her if she really thought she could beat him. Then he said he was done talking. He threw the log with full force, sending it, and Xiao Xiao, flying in the other direction. But she wasn't giving up. She used a move called ground impact, put her hands forward, and launched dozens of stones at him. Qin Yu realized no one had warned him about this, but he had no plans to quit. He stood up and blocked the attacks with his hands. Qin Yu blocked all the attacks, and the stones flew back toward Xiao Xiao. Yuli, who was watching everything, was shocked. She knew Xiao Xiao was already at the 3rd level, and Yuna pointed out that reaching that level at her age was rare. She said Xiao Xiao had a bright future ahead. Yuli saw pieces of earth flying at high speed, causing serious damage. They were like bullets. She had heard that demons from the other side didn't react to such attacks, but she couldn't believe Qin Yu could handle them too. Meanwhile, the main character thought to himself that the girl's powers were dangerous and he shouldn't let Xiao Xiao attack again. So, without wasting time, he rushed forward, deciding to fight her hand to hand. Xiao Xiao immediately tensed up. She knew she couldn't let him get too close. She pushed off the ground, raised her arms, and created a huge stone wall in front of her. But Qin Yu was stronger. He jumped over the wall easily and ran straight toward her at full speed. Xiao Xiao was ready. She threw stone blocks at him, trying to stop him. She thought Qin Yu wanted to distract her with the dust and smoke so he could get close. But she believed that wouldn't work on her, because she was a dog type and had no problem seeing through it. She smiled, turned in his direction, and said she was about to catch him. But at that moment, Qin Yu was already behind her. He grabbed her by the neck and said, smiling, that he had tricked her. People watching the fight could tell it wasn't a fair move. They said Qin Yu was just using sneaky tricks and deserved a penalty for it. The only person who seemed happy was Yuli, who shouted out to cheer for her brother. Their mother, however, started to think that maybe Qin Yu was stronger than she had thought. After all, he had many chances to hurt Yuli earlier when she was bothering him, but he never did anything. She looked at Qin Yu, who was now sitting calmly by the fire, and started wondering if maybe he was different from the other demons. After the fight, Qin Yu showed Xiao Xiao a plate with a dinosaur head sticking out of it. He said it was proof that her sisters had tried to poison him, but Xiao Xiao said she believed his strong demon stomach could handle it, and besides, appearances could be deceiving. Hearing that, Qin Yu got angry and said if that was the case, he'd be happy to see the girls eat it themselves. The girls immediately started protesting. Xiao Xiao thought to herself that the dish was definitely not edible. She knew her sisters weren't great cooks, so she tried to distract Qin Yu and said she knew where to find real food. But Qin Yu didn't listen. He stayed silent and poured the contents of the bowl into Xiao Xiao's mouth. She fell to the ground, and her sisters started panicking, worried about her. That's when Qin Yu realized he should have listened to Xiao Xiao. Maybe she really did know where to find something edible. On the 3rd day, a helicopter arrived at the island with boxes of food. The messengers sat near the fire to rest. One of the boys suggested they eat kebabs now, before they got cold and didn't taste good. But just then, something rushed past and snatched the food from their hands. When the messenger looked up, he saw a girl sitting in a tree nearby. It turned out to be Kwan. She had stolen all the food and was now happily sitting on a branch, eating the kebabs. The messenger tried to calm her down, saying there was no need to steal food since they had plenty. But suddenly, someone appeared behind the messenger and hit her hard on the back, knocking her out cold. It turned out that Qin Yu and Xiao Xiao had knocked out the messengers and were now ready to take all the food they brought. Big sister was right, there was a lot of food here, and thanks to Xiao Xiao, they even managed to get some chicken wings. However, at that moment, the girl noticed something odd. She saw the icon of the people they knocked out and realized they were from the third group of resource distribution workers. So, they attacked the employees. When Xiao Xiao and Qin Yu heard this, they looked at Yu, surprised, as they continued eating the chicken wings. Soon, they realized what they had done. Xiao Xiao quickly started grabbing food boxes, saying they needed to pick them up and leave before anyone found out. They figured they could close in a ring when the other participants arrived. Just then, Lon Lon turned around and saw someone standing behind them. She realized they hadn't escaped in time. At that moment, Qin Yu stood up and told the girls not to worry. He assured them he had a plan and that they could get even more supplies than they thought. Meanwhile, a whole group of fighters approached them, also wanting to get resources. One of the participants asked the commander if he was sure they were heading in the right direction. He suggested it was pointless to go there since, before the competition started, they were warned that no food would be distributed after the first day. However, the commander assured him that, due to an accident, 90% of the participants were stranded halfway and couldn't get supplies. He didn't think they'd let everyone starve. According to his assumption, the supply points would disappear only after all participants had taken their share. Soon, the boys arrived at the spot and saw boxes of supplies in front of them. A smile appeared on their faces as they realized they hadn't come in vain. In front of them stood a man dressed as a messenger. They didn't suspect he was actually one of the participants. Qin Yu greeted the boys and said he was glad to see they made it there. They thanked the messenger for his hard work, and the leader asked for supplies for 4. Qin Yu then asked what range of supplies they wanted. The boys were surprised to hear about the range of supplies, as they had never heard of it before. Qin Yu pointed to a table with different boxes of food, each corresponding to a different rank. He said that since their competition was of a high level, they couldn't just leave participants to their fate. The most appetizing set was the rank D set, so all the boys asked the messenger for that one. When Qin Yu heard their requests, he asked them to prepare 4 energy balls as payment for 4 sets of rank 3 supplies. The leader was shocked, realizing they had to pay for the supplies. Qin Yu put on a surprised face and said that nothing in this world was free, so they would have to pay for the supplies in the competition. The boy objected, saying that the 4 energy balls were all they had collected in the last few days, and he didn't want to just give them away for food. Meanwhile, the girls hid behind the boxes and watched everything. Kwan asked her older sister if she thought Qin Yu would really be able to exchange food for energy balls. The girl replied that they could only trust him at that moment. Qin Yu tried to stay calm, but inside, he was already feeling victorious because he knew the others were now in a tough spot. One of the participants asked what he had just said, but Qin Yu acted like he hadn't said anything. The guy insisted, saying that if Qin Yu told him what was going on, they would pay him for the information. Qin Yu laughed and said that he wasn't a tyrant and was willing to make some concessions. He told them he had heard something, but only if they promised not to tell anyone. He then asked if they knew why resources were assigned to different ranks. The boys looked confused because they didn't know the answer. Qin Yu explained that it was a hidden bonus feature. Those who used energy balls would get double rewards after the game ended. The girls who were watching were impressed by how smart Qin Yu was and were excited to hear this. They asked Qin Yu if he was telling the truth. Qin Yu smiled and said it was true. He also added that the leader of this group had a cute face, which was why he promised not to tell the others. The boy looked confused and asked what others Qin Yu was talking about. Qin Yu silently pointed to a spot, and suddenly, other participants who were also looking for resources jumped out of the bushes. At that moment, the boy decided to act fast and gave away the energy balls for 4 sets of rank D before the other participants could do it. The girls watching realized that Qin Yu was very clever, and his plan to deceive everyone was brilliant. Meanwhile, there was an uproar among the spectators. The organizers asked the directors how a participant named Qin Yu managed to tie up the employees. They also said this was against the rules, and he should return the balls he had taken. However, the director told them that what Qin Yu did wasn't illegal, it was just an exchange of resources. Deputy Director Lu also said the organizers should be glad someone thought of such a clever way to do things. Representatives from other schools whose students had been tricked were confused and asked what their students should do now. Vice Principal Yang joined the conversation and asked why why there was so much confrontation. He said that if any rule had been broken, it would have been reported, and since nothing had happened, everything was fine. The organizers, seeing how blatantly their students had been deceived, silently cursed Qin for tricking everyone and getting away with it. Meanwhile, Qin trade continued. A crowd of participants had gathered around him, happily handing over their energy balls in exchange for the promised prizes. However, just as the boys were about to leave, they suddenly heard an associate employee's voice. He informed them that Qin wasn't an actual staff member. It turned out that one of the couriers had managed to escape and revealed that the couriers were tied up and had their clothes stolen to pose as employees. They were tricked into helping Qin get free resources. As soon as the participants realized they had been deceived, anger spread among them. Some looked at each other, unsure of what to do. When they turned towards the store where Qin had been, they saw that he had already escaped with his partners. The main character looked at his remaining energy, which was 31.37, and realized everything they had done wasn't for nothing. Lan asked how many balls he had collected, but he said it didn't matter. She said any number was fine. Suddenly, something flew at them out of nowhere, but Xiao managed to kick it away at the last second. She wondered who was suddenly attacking them. Then 3 women from the forest appeared. One of them held her spear and complimented Xiao on her quick reaction. She said it would be a shame to die with such good stats. When the 2 groups ended up in the same clearing, the main character could feel that the girls were getting more hostile. He greeted them silently, sensing that something interesting was about to happen. Xiao warned him that the Snake Tribe people were great at hand-to-hand combat and that the Rhino Tribe had massive strength. They were born fighters. But Qin thought the hooded girl was the most dangerous one. The Snake Girl asked her teammates how they should split the opponents. She said she'd give the hooded girl the tall guy since he looked the strongest. But the hooded girl said being tall meant being slow and easier to beat. She said she couldn't accept that kind of opponent. She told the Snake Girl and the Rhino Girl to handle that guy, while she would take on someone else. The Snake Girl was surprised but didn't argue and went for Qin. Xiao stepped forward and quietly told her sisters not to fight yet, as they needed to join in later. Meanwhile, the Snake Girl turned to Qin and said he was the one she liked most out of everyone. She licked her spear and asked if he wanted to have some fun. Qin looked surprised and said he came from a good family, so she might misunderstand him. The Snake Girl laughed and said the boys had been enjoying themselves, but now it was their turn to play. She attacked Qin with her spear. Xiao shouted at him to be careful, but he managed to block the spear with his hand. He said he wasn't as smart as her because he gave people chances. He asked if they could set a small goal, maybe fight until someone cried, and then grabbed her spear with his other hand. He got close to her face, smiled, and called her Aunt. The Snake Girl got really upset when he said that, even tearing up. She hit him with her tail, sending him flying. Now she was furious. Meanwhile, Xiao didn't realize a monster was flying toward her from behind. The big rhino woman stood behind her and was ready to attack. When Xiao turned around, she saw 2 huge, glowing fists heading her way. Qin kept dodging the Snake Girl's attacks. He said she was being too harsh. He looked around, trying to figure out where she was, but didn't know what to do. Then the girl ran at him from the forest and told him to stop trying to escape and start thinking about his last words. When her spear was just 2 centimeters from his face, Qin decided to upgrade his body using the system. At the last second, he dodged the attack. He felt like his vision and strength were at their best. He prepared to hit her, but the Snake Girl dodged and landed safely. Qin noticed blood on the grass. He looked at his hand and saw a deep scratch. It was bleeding. He was upset that he had failed. Looking closely, he saw a snake wrapped around his arm. That's when he realized her flexible, slippery body had made him lose power and redirected his strike, causing him to hurt himself. The Snake Girl walked up to him and said that was quite a blow. She got ready to attack again and said she'd use her legs this time. Qin admitted that she was more experienced. She jumped at him with her mouth open, showing her forked tongue. As Qin turned and ran toward a tree, she laughed and said he couldn't escape. But Qin wasn't running away. He hid behind the tree, grabbed it, and smiled. He asked why she thought he was running. He pulled the tree out of the ground and said he was just warming up, then threw it at her. She barely dodged it and reminded him she was a snake. She charged at him again, saying he'd now pay for being ignorant. She hit him between the legs with her full strength, but instead of hurting him, her spear broke. Qin rushed forward and grabbed her by the neck, saying he'd finally caught her. He said throwing the tree was just a distraction. The Snake Girl was shocked and asked how he planned it all. She didn't understand how he blocked her strike since that's supposed to be every man's weak spot. Qin laughed and said he was stronger than most men, even in that area. He leaned toward her and said they should decide what to do next. While Xiao was fighting the Rhino Girl, her sisters attacked the Hooded Girl, but they soon realized she was too fast and strong for them. She yawned and told them they were too weak to be interesting. Then she noticed a bit of hair on the ground, it was the snake girls. She ran over and found her teammate lying there, bleeding and barely conscious. The snake girl said she couldn't keep fighting. The hooded girl was shocked and asked what Chinyu had done to her. Just then, Chinyu appeared and said he was testing a new move. He thought to himself that the snake girl's aggression had only made him stronger. He looked at the hooded girl and said it felt like a whole new world had opened up to him. The girl said she was wrong about him. He really was strong enough to be her opponent. She knelt down and got ready to draw her weapon. She called Chinyu over and asked his name. He smiled and said, "I am your dad, Chinyu." But just then, the girl disappeared and a hurricane formed in the clearing. She reappeared right in front of him and held a knife to his throat. She told him her name was Tang Lien. Chinyu just laughed and said she looked good in a killer outfit. When the girl heard that, she gave a nervous smile and told the boy that he really did manage to make her angry. Chinyu just laughed and said she had never been calm in the first place, so it didn't surprise him. Meanwhile, the dogs were watching their fight from behind the bushes. They warned Chinyu to be careful, saying Tang Lien wasn't that simple. She had been trained to be a killing machine since she was little, so her speed was unmatched. Before Chinyu could even react, Tang Lien stabbed him in the leg with her knife and immediately rushed at him, trying to end the fight. Chinyu realized she was really fast and he didn't have time to react to her moves. When he turned around, he noticed that a strange hurricane had appeared behind him again. Right then, Tang Lien showed up behind him and put a knife to his throat. She said if that was all he could do, this battle would be over soon. Chinyu thought to himself that this girl was way stronger than him. Tang Lien then jumped back, getting ready to attack again. He knew she was way faster, and before he could do anything, she hit him in the shoulder. Tang Lien kept landing hits on different parts of his body. Chinyu struggled to fight back since he couldn't even keep up with her speed. The dogs and Yuran were watching everything closely, thinking he would probably lose. The contest organizers were actually happy about this. They hoped Tang Lien would finally beat him. Yuli, on the other hand, was upset because her brother might lose to someone other than her. Yuna tried to calm her down and told her to look at Chinyu's face. Even though Yuli looked annoyed, she still looked at the screen. When she saw his smile, Yuna said Chinyu must have spent years preparing for something and believed he had a plan. Meanwhile, Tang Lien kept attacking without letting him move. Chinyu's whole body was full of deep scratches. He thought even though she was faster and more experienced, she wasn't stronger than him. Still, if things kept going like this, he'd collapse from exhaustion. He knew he had only one shot to turn things around. So despite the pain, he turned to Tang Lien and called her a mediocre old woman, saying she hadn't even hurt him and didn't deserve to call herself a warrior. Everyone was shocked that he had the nerve to insult her in such a situation. Chinyu looked around, trying to spot her, and asked her to fight properly. He added that her attacks felt like a gentle massage. Suddenly, he felt a strange energy surrounding him, stopping him from moving and causing a lot of pain. Tang Lien started using even faster attacks, leaving dozens of cuts on his body in seconds. But Chinyu kept standing, pretending like he didn't feel anything. Yuli asked her mom if it was time to get Chinyu a coffin. Yuna didn't know how to respond because she had no idea what Chinyu was planning either. Chinyu looked at his system, which said his energy was increasing with his rising hostility. But he wondered why Tang Lien wasn't reacting to his taunts. If this kept going, he'd really collapse. He had clearly underestimated her. Then suddenly, he got punched in the face and thrown aside. Tang Lien realized Chinyu was provoking her and that she had to stay calm and not let her emotions show. As she fell, she blamed herself for being too focused on killing him and letting her guard down. But Chinyu didn't give her a chance to recover and ran at her with his exterminator elbow technique. Right before it landed, someone else appeared near Tang Lien and threw Chinyu away with full force, sending him flying into a tree. It turned out to be Tang Lien's rhino sister. She angrily asked Chinyu how he dared hurt her sister and said they'd see how many lives he had left. The rhino girl got ready to attack using her powers, and even though Tang Lien tried to stop her, she punched straight at Chinyu's face with full power. But he didn't seem hurt at all. The rhino girl was shocked to see him still standing. That made her even angrier. She said she was a warrior and would never give up. She kept attacking, but Chinyu didn't react. He just smiled at her and said she should have listened to her little sister's advice. The girl got more upset and told him to stop underestimating her. Just then, Chinyu realized she had fallen into his trap. He grabbed her fist, surprising her. Suddenly, her armor cracked and fell apart, leaving her without clothes. She was embarrassed and started covering herself, calling Chinyu an idiot, while her hostility towards him grew even more. Chinyu was surprised at her figure. Tang Lien quickly covered her sister and took her and the snake girl away. As they left, Tang Lien said she remembered how Chinyu had once helped them. After it was over, Chinyu's companions and the dogs came up to him and said he was really cool. Chinyu realized that even though he was in pain, his body was healing fast, so he wasn't too worried about the injuries. Then he turned to the girls and said they needed to raise their rank. He thought to himself that while physical training was good, he needed to find a way to attract more people and gain more energy. After that, he and the girls headed deeper into the island to gather more energy. Meanwhile, something strange was happening in the central area. People were fighting monsters that came out of the ground. They looked like giant worms with big mouths. These level 2 monsters were really scary, and it took several people to defeat even one of them. Qin Yu and the girls were watching everything from a hiding spot. Xiao Xiao asked if they were going to join in, but Qin Yu said there was no need to rush. There were already enough people fighting there, and he was sure the boss monster wouldn't just sit still. When he looked closer, he saw a huge spider-like creature with the body of a human girl with long pink hair and bangs covering her face. Xiao Xiao looked closer and realized it was a level 5 monster, the evil queen of the insects. She warned Qin Yu they wouldn't be able to defeat her, but Qin Yu asked why she thought they'd be going in alone. After that, he stood up and got ready to start his plan. Qin Yu shouted to the fighters on the battlefield, telling them the queen was coming and they needed to act fast. He said she would release a lot of energy and they wouldn't get another chance like this. The fighters thought about what he said and realized it made sense, so they rushed toward the insect queen, all wanting to take her energy for themselves. They attacked her with full force, not wanting to share anything. But the beetle queen easily knocked them away using her tail and legs. Then, the magicians stepped in and used their spells, hoping to break through her defenses. Qin Yu watched closely and thought she was really strong. He also noticed that none of the attacks seemed to affect her. As he looked more carefully, he saw a glowing purple crystal near her tailbone. He quietly told his companions and nearby fighters that he had a plan. He whispered it to Camille so others wouldn't hear. When she heard the plan, she said it was dangerous, but Qin Yu told her it was worth it. She grabbed a spear from a nearby fighter and ran toward the beetle queen, who was distracted by attacks from the front. Camille jumped into the air and aimed at the weak spot Qin Yu had found. Then, hostility toward Qin Yu started growing. He turned to Xiao Xiao and told her it was her turn. She jumped up and used a skill called Earth Punch, splitting the ground under the queen's feet. The insect queen's body cracked in several places, leaving large holes. Now, with the weak spot exposed, the main character charged forward with all her strength. But suddenly, she heard a strange sound behind her. When she turned around, she was shocked to see the insect queen still alive, and even scarier than before. Her mouth had become a giant black hole, ready to swallow anything, especially the one who had hurt her. Xiao Xiao was terrified. She didn't understand how the queen had survived. Then, the insect queen grabbed Qin Yu's head in her jaws while the system said his energy had increased by 1273. Xiao Xiao watched in horror as the queen swallowed him. But once Qin Yu was inside the monster, he suddenly felt something hitting it from the inside. It turned out that the main character had focused his power in his body and managed to escape through the monster's mouth, tearing it apart. And then he goes to Xiao Xiao and faints. The girl was shocked. Meanwhile, since Yuran was watching everything unfold, she told the doctors to hurry to the arena and help the participants. Yuli was horrified to see that her brother had lost consciousness. Later, Qin Yu woke up in a hospital bed, covered in bandages. The system told him he now had the soul of a level 5 demon. He was surprised but happy. He had thought he was useless, but now he had power. Still, he was confused about why he hadn't woken up sooner. He thought maybe he needed to get angry again to fully heal. But he decided to stop worrying and test out a new skill. He clenched his fist and felt a new kind of strength. His middle finger turned into a claw with a dark energy around it. He was a little disappointed that only his middle finger changed, but then he remembered he also had a new demonic armor upgrade. He got ready to try more new moves. Just then, a nurse brought in a doctor, saying the guy who defeated the pest queen was finally waking up. The doctor said it was good he was recovering, but he wouldn't be able to join the competition. A day later, most of his internal injuries were healed. The doctor smiled and said he could be discharged in a month. Qin Yu was shocked. He had to be in the competition the next day. But the doctor told him not to stress so much at his age. He reminded him that all his bones had been crushed, so competing wasn't a good idea. Qin Yu turned to his system, thinking there might still be a way. As the nurse was rebandaging him, he used his self-healing skill. He mentally apologized to the nurse, knowing he needed more energy to heal faster. Without thinking much, he reached out and touched the nurse, which embarrassed her. She slapped his hand and asked what he was doing. The system told Qin Yu that his energy had increased by 100. He smiled and said he was just stretching. The nurse, clearly annoyed, said she would call someone else to take care of him. Qin Yu was disappointed, realizing he could have gotten more energy from her, so the plan probably wouldn't work. Meanwhile, nurses were walking through the hospital halls, helping patients. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, lifting their robes. They quickly covered themselves. It turned out Qin Yu had used his powers again, which made the nurses angry. He then started telling the male patients what color underwear the nurses were wearing. The men found it entertaining and thanked him. But Qin Yu wasn't done. He used his power to leave all the patients without clothes, which made even more people upset with him. A few days later, a big crowd had gathered at the combat arena. Yuli and Yuna were among them. Yuli knew her brother had beaten the queen but thought he wouldn't be able to compete. Just then, the director announced Qin Yu's name and said he could enter the arena. Yuli was shocked and asked her mom if she heard that. She couldn't believe it, thinking he was too badly injured. Qingyu entered the arena, still wrapped in bandages. He didn't plan on missing the competition. Yuli was scared and confused about what he was doing. Qingyu walked up to his opponent while humming a song. The opponent was surprised by how strange Qingyu was acting. He grabbed his sword, unsure of what would happen. Qingyu suddenly stretched out his hand and bowed, saying it was nice to meet him. The opponent, trying to be polite, also bowed and greeted him. At that moment, Qingyu took advantage of the situation and slammed his fist into the man's head, knocking him into the ground. The opponent couldn't get back up. The referee declared Qingyu the winner. Meanwhile, Yuli and Yuna just stood there, pretending they didn't know him. Over the next few days, Qingyu kept winning matches by using his shameless adaptability. He knocked out each opponent, which boosted his energy. Although every defeated opponent felt angry toward him, it actually helped him. Eventually, he faced another opponent, and it turned out to be Tang Lian, someone he had met before. Tang Lian looked at Qingyu and said this time she would get her revenge. She removed her cloak and pulled out her weapon, saying she wouldn't fall for his tricks again. Qingyu started waving his arms around, pretending to be a skilled fighter. The fight began. Tang Lian looked confused and asked where his weapon was, but Qingyu just smiled and said his body was his weapon. Tang Lian hid her swords behind her back and said she wouldn't go easy on him. She was about to take off her armor but then stopped. This caught the attention of the announcer, who ran over to see what was going on. Tang Lian said she wasn't wearing anything under her armor, so she would just accept defeat. Qingyu was surprised and told her she didn't need to do that. He said no one was looking and she could take it off if she wanted. Tang Lian got angry and immediately attacked him with a lightning bolt. Qingyu barely had time to raise his armored hand to protect himself. When he looked up, Tang Lian was already landing hit after hit. She was incredibly fast. Qingyu realized that if he had faced her earlier in the tournament, he wouldn't have survived. Tang Lian thought she could beat him easily with armor, but things didn't go as expected. Still, she didn't want to bring shame to her family, so she used the full power of the Mantai and launched a powerful attack. Qingyu was scared because she was attacking with explosive force, and he knew another hit could cost him his arm. He also realized Tang Lian was ready for any tricks, so he had to take a risk. Tang Lian stabbed him with both swords, and blood came out from his back. She smiled and said he had won, but Qingyu disagreed. Even after getting stabbed, he gathered his strength and punched her, knocking her to the ground. Her armor cracked, and she was left lying there, exhausted. Qingyu thought her power might be stronger than a third-level warrior's. He pulled the swords out of his body, happy he had won. The wounds didn't bother him much because he could heal himself. Just then, he saw Xiao Xiao collapsing behind him. Qingyu ran over and caught him before he hit the ground. Xiao Xiao had 32 fractures, and Qingyu couldn't figure out who had hurt him. Xiao Xiao was usually very strong. Before passing out, Xiao Xiao warned Qingyu to be careful with space martial arts. Qingyu wondered if these were the difficult martial arts known in the West. The announcer said Wang Jie had won the match. But then, someone kept attacking, and Qingyu had to grab Xiao Xiao and pull her away just in time. A man landed where she had been. Qingyu angrily asked if the guy knew the rules. Wang Jie, a third-level warrior, said he just wanted to say hello. The medics came and took Xiao Xiao away. Qingyu wondered if Wang Jie was here for him and if Xiao Xiao got hurt because of him. At the medical station, Qingyu told Xiao Xiao he appreciated everything she had done. The announcer then said it was time to find out who made it into the top 6. More intense battles were coming, and soon they'd find out who this year's champion would be. Qingyu looked up and saw his next opponent was Wang Jie. Their match was scheduled for the same day. Wang Jie came to the arena but couldn't find Qingyu. Yuli told her mom and the girls nearby that Qingyu had finally shown up. When they looked up, they saw him wearing a new outfit with strange flasks hanging from it. People started making fun of his outfit. When he arrived, Wang Jie asked if Qingyu was ready to admit defeat. Qingyu said what Wang Jie planned wasn't his business. Wang Jie smiled, pulled out his sword, and said he wanted to see what someone from the Horn family could do. Qingyu told him to worry about his own appearance first. Suddenly, Wang Jie appeared behind Qingyu and noticed his demonic armor. He wanted it for himself. Qingyu tried to block a sword strike, but Wang Jie wrapped chains around his weapon and said the fight was over. Qingyu knew these attacks were too strong. He took a hard hit and fell. Wang Jie said he'd end it now, but Qingyu told him to wait and look up. When Wang Jie did, he saw the vials from Qingyu's outfit flying toward him. It was dust. While Wang Jie was distracted, Qingyu jumped up and ran at him. Wang Jie got mad and said he originally planned to let Qingyu go, but now he would finish him. Black smoke surrounded Qingyu, and he couldn't see anything. Xiao Xiao realized it was a trap. Qingyu used the technique to block her space control ability, which helped him win. His true form appeared. He was part of the Demon King clan. Before Wang Jie could react, Qingyu punched him. Qingyu asked why Wang Jie looked like that, which which made Wangja even angrier. Black energy surrounded him, and Qinyu realized Wangja's powers were very unusual. Yuna said anything was possible, but Wangja's abilities were clearly stronger than Qinyu's. Qinyu stood still, trying to figure out where Wangja was. Suddenly, Wangja struck him from behind and mocked him, saying he wasn't special. Qinyu turned and asked if Wangja was from the royal clan. Wangja confirmed it and hit him again, but Qinyu blocked it with his armor. Wangja was surprised and said the demon clan wasn't supposed to have such defense. He asked Qinyu who he really was. Qinyu appeared right next to him, smiled, and said he was his dad. Then he attacked repeatedly, building more hostility, which actually helped him in the fight. Wangja was sure he would win and didn't think Qinyu could match his skills. As he prepared for another attack, the crowd held their breath. Yuli noticed that suddenly everything had gone quiet, just as the smoke in the arena started to clear. Everyone saw Wangja on his knees while Qinyu stood holding his large sword, having just cut off half of Wangja's horn. Xiao Xiao was shocked that Qinyu actually beat him, and Yuran covered his face, clearly not expecting that outcome. In the arena, Qinyu had predicted Wangja's move. When Wangja appeared behind him and was about to strike, Qinyu reacted quickly, blocked the attack, grabbed Wangja's sword, and hit him between the legs. While Wangja was still kneeling, he asked how Qinyu knew he was behind him. Qinyu, holding Wangja's sword, ran toward him and said he didn't bring his spices for nothing. Then, with one clean strike, he cut off one of Wangja's horns. Wangja was horrified. Horns were a symbol of pride for his clan, and now he had lost one. He screamed in anger, and Qinyu felt his strength increase to 2,000. Then Qinyu's next opponent entered the arena. It was Ilios, the leader of the Sheep Knights, an 8th level warrior. She told Qinyu to step aside, saying she could handle it. But Qinyu was ready to fight and drew his sword. Just then, a wave of energy filled the arena and threw Qinyu back. Wangja was confused and asked what was happening and why the lights went out. When the smoke cleared, a huge horned man appeared, holding a sword and staring at everyone. Qinyu was shocked. It was a giant demon. Before he could react, Acrylic threw him into the stands, reminding him that she had asked him to leave. Pointing her dagger at the giant demon, she noticed he was a level 9 demon executioner. A giant demon grabbed Wangja, who immediately apologized and said he just wanted to sneak into this world and finish everyone. He pointed at Qinyu and said he never expected him to lose to someone like that. A giant demon looked at Qinyu and recognized him as the son of the horned demon. Wangja kept yelling that now his father was angry. Qinyu was as good as dead. A giant demon told Qinyu to surrender, saying he would give him that one chance. Yuna and Yuli were watching closely. When Yuna saw what was going on, she looked surprised. Wangja was upset and didn't understand why his father liked Qinyu more than his own son. Acrylic asked Qinyu what he thought about all this. Qinyu said he didn't agree with any of it. She then turned to the giant demon and asked if he heard Qinyu's answer, then attacked the giant demon, saying he was ugly and should return to the demon world instead of hurting others. As she got close, a wall of fire appeared in front of the giant demon, blocking her attack. She jumped back to a safe spot and swore to defeat him. A giant demon looked at Qinyu and Acrylic and said they would regret this. Qinyu felt the same kind of hostility from Wangja that he had felt from his aunt. Then a ball of fire appeared in the arena and forced both demons out. Yuli said that even if Qinyu wasn't the most obedient, he still deserved better treatment. Yuna started to think maybe demons could change. But since level 9 demons had sneaked into the arena, she said the place was no longer safe and they had to leave. Qinyu was shocked to hear that. Meanwhile, buses arrived, carrying armed guards. Qinyu suspected the organizers didn't want him to win because he was a demon, so they cancelled the tournament. Xiao Xiao walked up and said it had always been like that. She asked if they were leaving, and the girls told him a car was waiting for them. They thanked Qinyu for everything, saying he was a good person deep down. Qinyu asked them not to talk like that, like they were trying to sell him something. Xiao Xiao ran up and hugged him tightly, then got on the bus and said goodbye, promising they'd meet again. Qinyu looked surprised as the bus drove away. He couldn't believe he had just been hugged by a girl. Soon after, he got on his own bus and went home, thinking about the giant demon's warning that he would regret it. He wondered if a giant demon had set a trap for him. Suddenly, the bus started shaking and passengers fell from their seats. Looking outside, Qinyu saw that burning wolves were attacking them. He realized this must be the giant demon's last move. The soldiers on board told the drivers to take the kids to the nearest shelter. When one driver heard this, he smiled in a strange way. Everyone was told that a battle was about to start, and they had to hold out until help arrived. The bus kept moving, trying to avoid the wolves. Just before the doors closed, the bus got stuck, and the soldiers told everyone to stay calm until they reached safety. When the passengers finally got off to take a break, the driver told some soldiers to stay behind. He wondered if he should call for help, because if the enemy found them, the steel doors wouldn't hold. Just then, Chinyu stepped forward and said there was something wrong with the driver. The soldiers tried to stop him, saying personal issues could wait. But Chinyu pushed them aside with ease and said this was more important. He walked up to the driver, and when the man asked what he wanted, Chinyu didn't answer. He just punched him with his armored hand, leaving a huge hole in his chest. The soldiers pointed their guns at Chinyu and told him to let the man go, or they'd shoot. But then the driver started laughing, and a dark energy surrounded him. He turned into a huge monster with lots of teeth. The soldiers realized it had all been an illusion. The driver had been a monster the whole time. Chinyu's punch had defeated it. They thanked him, but Chinyu said it was nothing. Then, more monsters appeared, some of the passengers he had attacked earlier. It turned out they weren't human either, just smaller monsters. A soldier asked how he knew they weren't real people. Chinyu said it was obvious. His system had been showing hate messages, and only the driver could hate him that much. They realized the driver had lured them there to ambush them. Before they could react, a dragon from the world of the dead appeared in the shelter. It had already eaten several people. When Chinyu appeared, the dragon looked right at him and even let go of the person it was about to eat. It blasted fire at Chinyu, who barely dodged it. A soldier nearby warned Chinyu to be careful. When Chinyu looked up, he realized the dragon was already standing right in front of him. The system kept confirming to Chinyu that the hostility around him was increasing. Suddenly, he ran to the side, and the dragon chased after him. At one point, Chinyu jumped unexpectedly, which confused the dragon. It looked around but couldn't see him anywhere. Chinyu had disappeared so fast that the dragon didn't have time to react and ended up crashing into a wall. Once the dragon was finally defeated, the other passengers got off the bus and praised Chinyu. The system told him his energy was increasing steadily, so he thought this fight was a good chance for him to grow stronger. He even thought that this demon was helping him get stronger just by fighting him. He walked up to the dragon and attacked before it could recover, hitting it over and over until it died. The military watched everything in shock, realizing that Chinyu wasn't even going to spare the woman. Then they got a message over the radio that a dog convoy had been attacked in the 4th block of the city and no help could be sent. When Chinyu heard Dog City, he ran to a soldier and asked if the message came from a security radio. The soldier said yes and that help was needed. Before the soldier could finish speaking, Chinyu grabbed the radio and said he would handle it himself. Meanwhile, in the 4th block, 2 demon girls were talking. One of them asked why they weren't allowed to finish anyone, even the ones who had imprisoned her. Her partner said it was because someone important to them was among the hostages. Before they could say more, Chinyu suddenly landed on the pink-haired girl. He grabbed her and asked if she was okay. She looked at him with admiration and thought he was very handsome. The other demon girl walked over and asked Chinyu which squad he was from and how he got there. Chinyu said he was from the Demon King's convoy and was sent on a mission by the king himself. Then he gave them a red stone. The green-haired girl recognized it as a dragon scale and asked why it had blood on it. Meanwhile, the pink-haired girl couldn't stop clinging to Chinyu and said they were going to meet another squad and that she wanted to take him with her. The green-haired girl noticed she was being ignored and got annoyed. As the 3 of them walked away, Chinyu thought about how he was going to save his dog companions. In the cage, the dog sisters were waiting. Xiao Xiao tried to comfort Quan by saying someone would rescue them soon. Then she heard a familiar voice and realized it was Chinyu. But when she saw him, she froze in shock. His face had lipstick marks all over it. She asked if he was really working with the demons. Just then, the pink-haired girl walked up and said it looked like she had found her partner. Xiao Xiao angrily asked Chinyu what he had told the demon girl. Instead of answering, Chinyu grabbed Xiao Xiao, covered her mouth, and said he wasn't the bad guy and that he was trying to help them. The demon girl told the dog sisters they weren't strong enough to understand someone like him, and then they left the room. Chinyu thanked the demon girl, and she said it was nothing. They just needed to trust each other. At that moment, Xiao Xiao felt something in her mouth. When Chinyu and the demon girl were far enough away, she spit out the earpiece he had given her. It turned out to be a device to listen in on military communications. Soon, the military noticed an unknown device was connected and guessed someone was spying on them. Xiao Xiao explained that Chinyu had revealed who he really was and smuggled the earpiece to them. They decided to fight back and form a special squad to get the demon back. When asked who wanted to join, Chinyu thought he didn't really need to, but if they messed up later, he could still earn points. So he raised his hand and volunteered. Some 3rd and 4th level warriors joined too. The bone demon thanked them and said they'd be rewarded when they returned. Chinyu noticed how everything seemed connected. The bone demon pointed to a monster and said it was time to go. He explained there were many coordinates, each linked to a different demon, and none led directly to the target. It would be up to them to figure it out and get to the demon before the enemy did. Then he teleported everyone. The landing was rough for Chinyu. He ended up in a bad spot, where orcs immediately ran toward him. Other monsters got ready to attack too. They didn't want to lose face and shouted that demons would never be slaves. But suddenly, the guards of that land pulled out machine guns and started shooting, making it clear who was in charge. Chinyu ran as fast as he could, thinking only fools would stay there. He found a room and hid inside, peeking through a crack in the door. He heard the guard saying they needed to check on the demon prisoner. Just then, he heard a sound behind him. He turned and saw a young demon girl chained to the wall with her mouth gagged. He realized she was the one they had come to rescue. He smiled and said he wasn't going to do anything and would leave. But the girl was making loud noises, clearly trying to say something. Chinyu walked up to her, bowed slightly, and asked if she wanted to say something. Then he tapped her forehead and said he preferred silence. Suddenly, he heard the guards coming to check if the prisoner was still alive. Chinyu looked around in panic but had nowhere to hide. When the guards entered, they saw the girl was fine and were relieved. One of them said maybe they should ask the knight to handle her, but the other said everything seemed secure enough. Meanwhile, Chinyu was hiding on the roof, struggling not to fall. He thought there was no way he could get involved now. He wouldn't earn any points and might even get finished by Aunt Yuna. As the guards left, thinking their job was done, Chinyu lost his grip and fell loudly to the ground. The guards heard the noise and decided to check the room again. At that moment, the main character realized things weren't going well for him. He suddenly noticed his hand was resting on something soft. When he turned, he saw it was on the girl's chest. The girl was furious and started making loud noises. Chinyu told her to be quiet, but then realized he was the one being too loud for someone trying not to get caught. The guards burst into the room and asked what was going on. They saw a strange scene, Chinyu's hand on the girl's chest, while they were still confused. And that's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like button for more juicy updates, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you never miss out.